The certified letter arrived on a Thursday morning, wedged between my mail slot and the doorframe like it was trying to force its way into my life. I pulled it free, already knowing what it was from the embossed logo of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association. Inside was a violation notice, formal and cold, accusing me of constructing an unauthorized structure on my property. The structure in question: a 10 by 12-foot garden shed I'd built in my backyard 3 months earlier. A simple, beautiful cedar structure with a pitched roof and river rock foundation that I'd designed and constructed myself. The fine, $10,000. I read the letter twice, my coffee growing cold in my hand. As a licensed structural engineer with 15 years of experience designing commercial buildings across 3 states, I knew exactly what permits were required for my shed. I'd pulled them all. I'd followed every code, every regulation, every setback requirement down to the inch. But apparently, that didn't matter to Denise Holloway, the HOA president. The letter demanded I appear before the HOA board in 1 week or face legal action, and a lien on my property. It was signed in Denise's sprawling, self-important signature, with a handwritten note at the bottom. Compliance is not optional. I should mention that Denise and I had history. When I'd first moved into Riverside Meadows 2 years ago, she'd welcomed me with a 3-page list of community standards and pointed comment about how certain people try to change the character of established neighborhoods. I'd smiled politely and ignored her. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was building something beautiful that she could see from her kitchen window. The next morning, I walked my property with my original building plans, my permit approvals, and my engineering seal documentation. Everything was perfect. My shed sat exactly 8.2 feet from my rear property line, well beyond the required 5-foot setback. It was under the X or B square foot threshold that would require additional permitting. The foundation was properly engineered for drainage and frost heave. I'd even matched the cedar siding to my house's trim. But I knew this wasn't about code compliance. This was about control. I decided to attend the HOA meeting. The community center conference room smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. 7 board members sat at a folding table at the front, with Denise presiding from the center seat like a judge at a tribunal. She was in her early 60s, with helmet-like silver hair and the kind of pearl necklace that screamed, "I speak to managers." Her reading glasses hung from a beaded chain around her neck, and she wore them like a weapon. About 20 neighbors filled the audience chairs, most looking bored or annoyed at being there. "We'll now hear the matter of 847 Willow Creek Drive," Denise announced, shuffling papers with exaggerated importance. "Mr. David Chain has erected an unauthorized structure in violation of Section 12.4 of our covenants." I stood, carrying a leather portfolio. "May I address the board?" Denise's smile was thin and sharp. "You may present your defense, but I should warn you that violations of our architectural standards are taken very seriously." I approached the table and laid out my documents methodically. "These are the building permits issued by the county for my garden shed. As you can see, they're approved and signed off by the building inspector. Here's my site plan showing exact measurements and setbacks. And here's my engineer's certification. I'm a licensed structural engineer, and I designed this structure to exceed all applicable codes." Denise barely glanced at the papers. "The issue, Mr. Chen, is not whether the county approved your shed. The issue is that you did not seek HOA approval before construction. I submitted an architectural review application 4 months ago. I replied calmly. I have the certified mail receipt showing it was delivered to this office. We have no record of receiving it, Denise said, her tone dismissive. I pulled out another document. This is the signature confirmation from your office manager, Carol, acknowledging receipt on March 15th. I also have photographs time-stamped showing the application in your office mailbox. The room went quiet. A few board members exchanged glances. Denise's face flushed pink. Even if that were true, your application was clearly deficient. The board has the right to reject any structure that doesn't meet our aesthetic standards. What aesthetic standards does my shed violate? I asked. It's too visible from neighboring properties, she snapped. It creates an eyesore and diminishes property values. I pulled out my phone and showed photos. My shed is barely visible from any neighboring property due to the existing fence line and landscaping. However, I'd like to point out that the board approved a similar shed for Arts Banway Oak Lane last year, one that's actually larger than mine and closer to the property line. That's different, Denise said quickly. How? The applicant followed proper procedures. So did I. I have documented proof. Denise's pearl necklace seemed to tighten around her neck. Mr. Chen, you seem to think you can simply do whatever you want because you have some fancy engineering license. This community has rules, and you will follow them like everyone else. The fine stands. You have 30 days to remove the structure or the amount will double. I smiled then, not a friendly smile, but the smile of someone who would been waiting for exactly this moment. Before you make that final, I said, I should mention that I filed formal complaint with the state's Homeowners Association Oversight Board. I've documented your failure to process my application, your selective enforcement of architectural standards, and what appears to be personal bias in your decision-making. I've also retained an attorney who specializes in HOA disputes. Denise's eyes widened. You can't. I can, and I have. Additionally, I've requested a full audit of the HOA's finances and decision-making processes for the past 3 years. As a homeowner, that's my legal right under State Statute 47B. One of the board members, an older man named Tom, cleared his throat. Denise, perhaps we should review this matter more carefully. We've reviewed it, Denise hissed. The decision stands. I gathered my documents. Then I'll see you in court. I should also mention that my attorney has identified 11 other homeowners in this community who have faced similar arbitrary fines and selective enforcement. We are considering a class action lawsuit for harassment and abuse of HOA authority. The room erupted. Neighbors who would been silent suddenly started talking, several pulling out their phones to photograph my documents. Tom and 2 other board members were urgently whispering to each other. Denise slammed her hand on the table. This meeting is adjourned. Actually, Tom said, his voice firm, I move that we table the chain matter pending an independent review of the architectural application process. Second, another board member said immediately. Denise's face went from pink to crimson. You can't. All in favor? Tom asked. 5 hands went up. Only Denise and 1 other board member kept their hands down. Motion carries, Tom said. Mr. Chen, the board will review your application properly and provide a response within 2 weeks. I nodded politely and left. 2 days later, I received a call from Tom. Speaking quietly, he explained that several board members had been unaware of how Denise had been handling applications. My architectural review was approved unanimously in an emergency session. The fine was voided, and Denise had been asked to resign. She refused, of course. But at the next HOA election 3 months later, she lost her seat by a landslide. The new board president was Tom, a retired attorney who immediately implemented transparent application procedures and regular financial audits. As for me, I built a second shed the following spring, this time for storing my kayaks. I submitted my application through proper channels, and it was approved in 5 business days. Sometimes I see Denise at the community pool or the mailbox. She doesn't make eye contact anymore. Her era of petty tyranny ended the day she forgot that rules cut both ways, and that some people know how to use them. My garden shed still stands in my backyard, perfectly legal, perfectly engineered, and perfectly visible from Denise's kitchen window. Every time I'm out there organizing my tools or potting plants, I think about that HOA meeting. I think about how Denise assumed I'd simply roll over and accept her arbitrary punishment. I think about how she forgot to check who she was dealing with. And I smile. Because the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's watching them destroy themselves while you simply stand there, documentation in hand, and let the system they try to weaponize work exactly as it should. My shed is more than lumber and nails now. It's a monument to the principle that knowledge, preparation, and calm persistence will always triumph over petty authoritarianism. And every spring, when I plant new flowers around its foundation, I make sure they're visible from every angle, especially from Denise's kitchen window.